Yo, what's up guys, and welcome back to a new video. Today we're going to do a dungeon guide on Atal'Dazar. So without talking too much, let's dive straight into it. In my runs, we've usually instantly gone up to Rezan as our first encounter. This is probably one of the easiest bosses in terms of mechanics throughout the dungeon. So first of all, you'll notice the purplish piles of bones on the ground. If you walk over these, you will spawn reanimated raptors. You will then have to deal with these throughout the fight. They don't give any percent, and it will only make it more difficult for the tank. So make sure to avoid these purple piles of bones. For the first ability, we have Terrifying Visage. This ability will channel up, and you will need to be outside of the line of sight from the boss at the end of it. If you're not outside of the line of sight, you will get feared for 5 seconds, so long story short, make sure to hide. Quite soon after the Terrifying Visage, we get the second and last ability, called Pursuit. The boss will target one player and starts running after them. Whenever you get targeted by the Pursuit, the only thing you need to do is run away from the boss till the ability runs out. If you get too close to the boss, he will instead devour you, taking massive damage, and you will most likely not survive it. Now that we've done the first boss, we get up to the first bit of hard-hitting Thrash. The toxic saurids will randomly leap on players, dealing quite a big chunk of damage. So you want to make sure to kill them quickly or prevent them from jumping by using any forms of CC like a vortex or just stun them in place. The next mobs will also do quite a bit of group-wide damage. The honor guard will keep spewing out toxic puddles, which you will need to get out of as soon as possible to not take for high damage. The Shadow Blade Stalker will do periodic AoE damage, so healers, just be on your feet for these mobs since they will hurt quite a lot. Before we get to the next boss, there is a few more mobs that have noticeable abilities. First off, we get the Shield Bearer of Zul, which will periodically cast Bulwark of Juju, creating a dome in which all mobs will take reduced damage. You can either stun them on their cast or stop the effect, or simply kite the mobs out of it. Witch Doctors will keep casting Venom Blast on random players for quite a chunk of damage. Try to interrupt these whenever you have the chance to, so you can prevent a lot of damage onto the group. Lastly, they cast Unstable Hex, which will polymorph the targeted player for 5 seconds, so make sure to stop this ability. Now that we've dealt with all the trash along the way, the second boss on the list will be Vol'Kaal. This boss consists of 2 phases. In the first phase you will need to deal with 3 reanimated totems. You will need to kill all 3 totems at the same time to spawn the boss. If you fail to do so, the totems will reset and you have to do it all over again. While taking care of the totems, the boss will periodically leap on a player indicated by a big green swirly on the ground. Make sure you do not get hit by this because it will do heavy damage, and based on the key level you will most likely get one shot. Once you've taken care of all the totems, we enter phase 2 of the fight. In this phase we're only attacking the boss. But while we're fighting the boss, he will throw out toxic patches onto the ground on which you are currently standing, limiting your space to work with and dealing a lot of damage in the process. So make sure to not stand in the toxic patches on the ground. The trick is to kite the boss in a triangular motion around the room so you do not run out of space. If you do this correctly, you will never run out of space because the toxic patches will disappear after a while. The last mechanic of this boss is Noxious Stench. This is basically a kick it as fast as possible type of mechanic. If you kick it instantly, nothing bad will happen. On our way to the third boss, we face some new mobs along the way. First of all, we have to deal with a Feasting Sky Screamer. This mob alone doesn't really do much. It only has one ability called Terrifying Screech. You need to interrupt this cast in order to not get feared. And furthermore, the only thing that really hurts in this pack is the little ones that are jumping throughout your party and dealing random damage. For the big pack circling in the middle, we encounter some new mechanics. Atal'Dazar will target a random player with Frenzied Charge. This is a frontal ability charging directly to the player, so make sure you're out of the path of the dinosaur to prevent a lot of damage. The Dinomancer Kisho will keep firing quick shots and periodically cast Dynamite. You will need to interrupt this ability to prevent the dinosaurs from getting a heal over time, so make sure to keep it in your target. Last but not least, we have Monsumi. Monsumi does an ability called Wild Thrash. The only thing this does is pulsing AoE damage. So for all the healers out there, make sure you top off all the low HP players in your group and you should be fine with this pack. The bit of dangerous trash we encounter is right before the third boss. We faced 3 new mobs in this pack, and I would consider it one of the most dangerous or maybe the hardest pack to play in this dungeon. Priestess will target a random player with Transfusion. This ability will leech life from you, and the only way to stop it is walking through one of the red blood puddles over the ground. Make sure you take one of the blood puddles before the cast goes off, and the Priestess will then take damage instead of leeching life from you. The Juggernaut will charge on a player with Merciless Assault, dealing a lot of damage, and you'll preferably want to stop it if you are quick enough to do so. If not, just be able to quickly heal them up, since it will do a lot of damage. Last but not least, we have the Augur. The Augur will do 2 abilities. First of all is Wildfire. Wildfire targets a player for mediocre targeted damage, and a simple kick is enough to prevent it. The other ability is called Fiery Enchant. This has a 6-second channel in which the Augur will fire out multiple swirlies that you will need to dodge in order to not die. This is a priority kick, so make sure that you instantly kick it whenever it's up, because it takes up a lot of space, and it also makes it a lot harder to deal with the Gilded Priestesses. The third boss on the list is Priestess Alun'za. This boss will start off by placing 5 blood puddles around the room, which we will need for a later mechanic, so stand by with those. Secondly, the boss will spawn a mob that will actively start running around the room, trying to collect the blood puddles that have been placed around it. You want to instantly move the boss over to the gold ad and make sure to either hard CC it or kill it before it reaches a blood puddle. If the gold ad, however, reaches one of the blood puddles, it will consume it and makes the boss encounter a lot longer than it needs to be. Next up, the boss will cast Transfusion. Much like the ability we talked about before with the Gilded Priestess, you'll need to soak one of the blood puddles in order to not let the boss leech health from you. If you successfully soak a puddle before the boss gets the cast off, you will instead do damage to the boss. So make sure that you prioritize getting one of these puddles before the cast goes off. It will make the fight significantly faster. Lastly, you will see gold orbs roaming around the room, and this is basically just a game of dodgeball. Make sure not to hit any of them, and you will be completely fine. Now that we've gotten 100% count and did the 3 previous bosses, we can move on to the final boss. First, the boss starts off with casting Soul Rend. You will want to stack in a place far away from the boss with this ability, as it rips a piece of your soul and it will start trying to walk towards the boss. You will need to kill these before they reach the boss. If they do, however, reach the boss, the party will take massive pulsing AoE damage for an extended period of time, making it pretty much impossible for the healer to keep up, resulting in almost a guaranteed wipe. Healers do take care though, because this ability takes a large chunk of people's HP, so you want to have some healing ready. Secondly, the boss will cast Wrecking Pain throughout the fight. This is a simple cast, you will only need to interrupt it, but if it goes through, it will pretty much always one-shot you depending on the key level. Luckily, the boss doesn't cast it very frequently, and it's a very simple interrupt which can stop it. Throughout the encounter, you will notice spiders running around the area. If you come in contact with one of these, they will explode, dealing a massive chunk of your HP bar. And they will most likely instantly kill you depending on the key level. If they explode, they will leave a big purple puddle on the ground, further leaving less room for you to work with, making the boss encounter a lot harder than it needs to be. All in all, Atal'Dazar looks like a pretty fun dungeon to me, with some challenging packs along the way. I do, however, think that it's probably gonna be a rough dungeon to get through in the first couple of weeks, since there is quite some coordination required not to fail. There's quite some hard-hitting mobs, and it will be fun to see how people will adapt to it in the first few weeks. Now that we've covered everything, thank you for watching. Make sure to give a thumbs up if you liked the video and consider subscribing. It helps me out a lot. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below or ask them while I'm streaming live on twitch.tv/JuventusTV.